a globally recognized thought leader in the field of responsible artificial intelligence. Professor Dignam is a professor at the Department of Computer Science and at the Umia University and serves as the director of the AI Policy Lab. Her remarkable expertise and contributions have made her a sought-after advisor on AI ethics and policy, reflected in her role as a member of the United Nations High-Level Advisory Body on Artificial Intelligence and senior advisor to the Wallenberg Foundation. Professor Dignam's groundbreaking research addresses the complex interplay between technology, ethics, and society. Her work spans responsible AI, the formalization of social interactions, and the design of
computer science. Most of you are studying business? Not everything. Computer science. Okay. Good. She's got computer science. So it's very happy to be here, and I'll be talking for a little bit, but I will also welcome your questions at the end. I do have a bit of a short schedule, but we'll try to have a possibility for questions, and I have to apologize. My voice is gone. It's a bit better today than it was yesterday, but it's a bit gone. So, artificial intelligence. Everybody is doing something with artificial intelligence. We all are using ChatGPT. We all are seeing the developments of artificial intelligence. But as we do that, we also need to be aware of the impact that artificial intelligence has in our lives and in our world. So we see. This was working. Yeah, we see a lot of development. Oops. Yeah. A lot of developments, a lot of breakthroughs. It's really almost every day you open the newspaper and someone did something new with artificial intelligence. You might have been aware that this year, in just a couple of 1 week ago, I think, there were also 2 Nobel Prizes given to work that was done around artificial intelligence. So the Nobel Prize of Chemistry was given for developments in chemistry that were only possible because of artificial intelligence, which was all this folding of proteins and testing and developing new proteins and so on. And the Nobel Prize of Physics was done about the algorithms that are at the ground of artificial intelligence and also seem to be very relevant for the development of the discipline of physics. So AI is doing a lot of great things, both in our daily lives and also scientifically we are seeing a lot. But at the same time, what we see and what we kind of all start to believe is that to do better and to do good artificial intelligence, we need to have a lot of data, we need to have very powerful algorithms, and for all of that, we also need to have a lot of infrastructure and a lot of computing power to make all this happen. What happens when we go in this direction? So more data, more computer power, more bigger algorithms. We start seeing that things start getting a bit, maybe not as nice as we would like. Just let's see at the data. If we look at the data in the way that the world, in the day that the AI is perceiving the world, we get a very strange shape of the world. Some countries and some areas of the world, there is a lot of data there, and there is a lot of development. And then the parts of the world, even India, becomes much more skinny than what we would expect. So the balance and the distribution of the data is not equal all over the world, which means that AI systems will be better at understanding what happens there in North America because they have more data than they need. But they will be not so good at understanding what's happening in Africa or in India or in South America because the data is not there. It's also important to realize that we are also putting all this data, like you say, you put all the eggs in the same basket. We are putting all this data in only a very few baskets. There are only 50% of this data is owned by 12 companies alone, or 12 institutions. 10 of those ones are in North America, 1 is in Europe, and 1 is in China. There is none of these 12 here in India or in anywhere else in the world. So again, the distribution of the data is skewed, but more importantly, the ownership of the data is very, very, very skewed. And if we believe that to do better AI we need more data, then what we get is that those that have the data are going to do whatever they want with AI, and we are dependent on what they do. Also, let's see how we build these algorithms. All of you that have studied computer science and studied some courses in AI, you might even have learned about this book by Russell and Norvig on artificial intelligence, which has been around like for 13 years, and everybody learned from this book. And how this book, and how do we learn about building these systems? We expect these systems to be rational, to optimize decisions based on a preference or in a set of priorities. Which is fine, because we know how to do these things. There is a lot of mathematical equations, a lot of work in which we know how to optimize a function. And because we do that, we can make those systems better and better. But if we are going to decide things ourselves, we are not usually so rational as that. Firstly, we all are very much able to deal with inconsistencies in our beliefs, to deal with incompatible goals. I want to be rich and to do nothing in my life, and all those things. We can do it all with no problem at all. And we are also much more influenced by the context than what optimal algorithm would do. So it's different, the way that AI is doing their reasoning and the way that we reason about our own world are different things. And if we start replacing all our reasoning by AI, we risk that what gets out of these systems is very different from what we have done ourselves. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but we need to be aware that it's different. And if it's different, we need to start thinking about what happens if then all the decisions are all very much optimizing for some type of priorities, where maybe that's not the case. There are also studies, especially in sociology, that say that this idea of being rational, of being optimizing, are values that are much more aligned with the global north than with the global majority. So if we really take the diversity of the world into consideration, then maybe all this rational idea needs to be reconsidered again. And in a sense, what are we doing? We are building AI systems that are very, very good at very specific, complex, but well-defined problems, like playing chess or playing Go. So the problems can be very complex, but there are problems that we can define. If we try to use AI to solve the real problems of the world, then maybe those problems are not so well defined, and then taking an approach which is about optimizing for priorities, where we don't have those priorities to be clear, it's maybe not the best way to do it. So we need to think about what we are doing before we rush into doing AI systems. And also because we all know it, AI uses a lot of resources. We only can do what these systems do if we really put a lot of the energy consumption going into the data centers and the computer centers in which all this computation is happening. That is also taking a lot of water, and that's for, the energy is something that people have been concerned for some time. But now we are seeing that water is also a big problem. So this study, it shows that in 2 years' time, if we don't do nothing, the AI need of water is like, I don't know, the size of probably equivalent to the size of the need of water for all of Bangalore. So all of Bangalore, all that water would go into AI. Then we have to make choice. Either goes to us or goes to AI. We cannot have both. With energy as well. We can say we want to use green energy for AI systems, but we only have a limited amount of solar panels, wind turbines, and so on. So if we are putting AI to be green, then maybe our cities are not so green as we want. So we really need to be aware of what it costs us. It's not just benefiting, it costs. And because it costs, we need to make choices and options. One thing which we are also seeing is that AI is much more ingrained in our daily lives than what we might think. ways we see that AI is really in our daily lives is the way that it really is shaping the democracy. Democracy is the elections, the information that we get. We don't really have any unbiased source of information. All the information that we read in the newspaper, in Facebook, in whatever, is in one way or another increasingly mediated by AI. So AI is in one way or another. It's not the systems themselves, because the AI doesn't want nothing, it's just a calculator, a big complex calculator. But people using AI are changing the way we read our news, which news I get, which news you get is different from what she gets or what I get. So it's all making our lives, in a sense, more complex, because we don't really know, we don't really have a direct access anymore to information. All of this is a reality. It's issues that a lot of people in the world are thinking about. Let's go start. What can we do about this? So the first thing is to realize that AI is not really intelligent, at least not in the way that we are intelligent. I just said that in that slide. But it's also not really artificial. It really uses the natural resources that we need for other things. So we do need to start understanding it not so much as artificial intelligence, but as one other type of tool that we have that is going to help us possibly deal with the complexity of the problems that we face. It is also very important to realize that because these systems are so good at manipulating language, doesn't mean that they are intelligent. Of course, intelligent people are usually also very good at manipulating language, but it's not a necessary condition. It can be people that cannot manipulate language and can be more intelligent than any of us. And it can be things like AI that seemingly write and talk in a very eloquent way, but have no idea whatsoever what they talk about. Systems don't. We tend to use very anthropomorphic concepts. AI thinks, the system said, the system believed that, AI doesn't like this, the computer doesn't like that. It's the way that we speak, but it doesn't mean nothing. At the end of the day, what we are dealing with is differential equations. Differential equations don't want, don't think, don't know anything about the world. So we have to be aware when we talk in these terms, that AI said, that first AI doesn't say. It just calculates something and then reproduces that. And if there is some meaning there, that meaning is from someone which was involved in building systems. So as we build AI, we also see that a lot of problems are coming. Discrimination, bias, weapons, all kinds of issues. And it's very easy to say, okay, AI is making all these problems, but AI is not making these problems. We are using AI to take decisions, which kid goes to which school, but it was our choice, and we are the ones there which accept the results or the suggestions that the AI system says. If we accept that, then we also have to accept that we are taking the responsibility for the decisions. It's not because AI says this kid should go to this school and that kid should go to another school, that becomes, it's not my fault, sorry. But with the self-driving cars, self-driving car ever comes into reality, and then it causes an accident, we cannot say, oh sorry, there was not my fault at all, it was just the car who did it all wrong. We don't accept that from airplanes, we don't accept that from the other cars, we don't accept that from no technology, so we need to be responsible. But what does that mean, and how can we be responsible? What can we be so complex, and these systems are more and more black boxes. We don't really know what's going inside the system, technically, mathematically, but we are using them anyway, so that makes us even more responsible. How can we be responsible? It starts by realizing that AI is not just about the software. It's about the whole social technical ecosystem in which this software is developed, is used, is deployed, is governed, is maintained. So everybody, every organization in this ecosystem, and many of you probably have courses on complex systems and on management of organizations, is not different from what we do already. It is also important to realize that AI is not the weather. We can complain about the weather. We know that we cannot do nothing about it. We can only complain. We can maybe be happy that it's nice weather and we can go to, I don't know, to a park. But we cannot change the weather, usually. AI is not the weather. We are building these systems, so we can complain about them, but at the same time we know that we can build them differently. And that is our responsibility. That's the responsibility of all of us. It's not just to complain, yeah, AI is biased, and AI is discriminatory, and AI is a black box, and it uses too much energy, and whatever. And we are doing it. These systems are the choices and the results of the choices that we make. Therefore, we do need to be thinking about how do we want to build the systems? What matters for us that should go into the system? Is that just efficiency and getting rich more? Or do we want systems that really benefit us and our environments and our societies and so on? Who's going to decide? It's me? Is it any of you that is programming the systems? Is your bosses which told you to program the systems? Is the society in general who allows it to happen? So we need to start thinking about that much more as a political problem than just a technology. We do need to be aware that the solutions and when we want really to build a responsible AI, that we need to look outside of the technology, but also at the sociology, the philosophy, the political science, and so on. Again, we build this system. We are making these things happen. And if we are making them happen, the question is not so much what is AI or what is not AI. The question is, what do we want AI to be? We are building them, so we can do whatever we want. It's our product to decide, our privilege to decide on that. So what options do we have? It starts often by the option that we want AI systems to be human-like. First thing we have to ask ourselves is, why does it need to be human-like? Can we do it in another way that it's not human-like, that we understand better that it's a machine and not something that it's replacing us, and that people start getting confused in interaction with the system because we start thinking it looks like us. But what it really needs, which human is it? Is it me? Is it you? Is it Einstein? Is it a baby of 2 years old? Who is it? Is someone here in India, someone in America? We don't have one average human. We are all different. So if we are building AI to be human-like, we need to think about who are the humans that we are really taking in our mind when we think about that. And maybe then we have other alternatives. The other alternative that people say, and often in this type of discussions, it comes up again and again, is the idea that, okay, we don't want this to be human-like because we only get into problems with those stuff. Now let's never do it human-like. We want to build tools. Right, let's go build tools, and then we make sure that it's all tools. But again, with tools, they come with some affordance, some functionalities, and some of those functionalities are good for everybody, but often they are not good for everybody. Someone can use better a tool than another. I'm left-handed, and if I try to use scissors in my left hand, it doesn't work. We try it. It's not built to be used in the left hand. So even a very simple tool like a scissors is determined who is going to benefit from using the scissors. So we need to think about who is going, what is this tool going to do, and is going to benefit. Then there is, going a bit back in the history of AI, when we started building these systems in the 50s and 60s, the idea was to build systems that would enable us understand a bit better our own intelligence, because we would make models, we would make simulations, and then in this simulation we could try to understand what is intelligence or not. So there were simulations, they were supposed to be existing only in our labs, but nowadays, of course, we are not using AI in that way. We are using AI really to make concrete and very real and very impactful actions into the world. So do we want AI to be a simulation that we keep in our labs and that we can use to understand things better? Or are we going to use it to really impact and take direct action in the world? So maybe if that's the reason, we need to think about other types of functionalities, other types of capabilities of these systems than the original idea that was just to simulate or to mimic human intelligence. Maybe they don't need to mimic human intelligence. And finally, a very important one is, do we want AI to describe the world as it is? Just the data that it gets and then describe the data, just show it on the slide with the data. Describe it as it is, as it sees it, or do we want AI to be normative? To describe a world that we don't have, in which is not, there is no bias, there is no discrimination, there is inclusion, everything is wonderful. Is that what we want? But then if that's what we want, so norms tell me this is what AI should do, AI should not discriminate. We know we all discriminate, we all know that our data discriminates and is biased. Who is going to decide what is good? Who is going to decide what is the correct, the better behavior of these systems? What are the norms that make it? So these are questions that, firstly, are questions that none of us that is studying computer science is actually equipped to answer. These are much more questions that can be answered in the political science, in the philosophy, in humanities, in the social science, but not so much in the engineering science. We know how to build things. Ask us to build something, the engineers will build it. But we need to start thinking about the effect and impact of the things that we are doing. And therefore, we need to be much more able and willing to talk with other disciplines to help us answer this type of questions. Because it all starts with what many people are calling the question zero. And the question zero means, before you start doing any AI development, you have to ask yourself, is AI the best solution for this problem that I'm trying to run? Or are there many other, maybe much more simple, much more human-based, much more institutional change-based options that are not AI? So we do really need to start thinking about the purpose of what we are doing. Is this purpose really something which requires the complexity of AI? We need to think about in a responsible way who is going to stand up and take responsibility and be accountable for what happens. Who is going to do that? It's usually not the people who develop the systems. Once you start working with one of these big organizations here in Bangalore, they tell you what to do this, and you just the only thing you can do as a developer is to do it. But someone needs to be responsible. So we need to start thinking about who is going to do that. And how are we going to enforce this responsibility from government and global part? We also need to be able to be preventive. Before things go wrong, we need to be able to think about what can go wrong. And if we don't think about what can go wrong, then we end up always being surprised when AI does things completely out of bounds of everything else. And like I said, we need to do this in a participatory way. We as engineers don't really know everything. Maybe we think sometimes that we know it all, but we don't. So we need to start working with other engineers. So governance. Governance is about this having a system which takes care of this kind of questions about the responsibility, what to do when things go wrong, who is going to check what is happening, and so on. There is a lot of work at this moment being done in the world about governance. I can tell a lot about it, but maybe much easier to understand is none of us would go into a car that we knew that had no brakes. We demand from any other technology. You would not go to an airplane if they would tell you, yeah, we're not really sure if the airplane is really working, but we start flying, and then when we are in the air, we'll see, and maybe we can then fix stuff, and we might even have to ask you to come and help us and fix the airplane. I don't think no one of us would accept that. Nowhere in the world. We do that with AI all the time. The big companies dump AI in the world. They don't really know what they did. They didn't took the due diligence of checking everything beforehand. And they just tell us, oh yeah, ChatGPT is going to say all kinds of wrong things. Yeah, just put up with it. And maybe if you can help, then tell us what is going to go wrong. It's exactly the same thing. We are fixing airplane as we are sitting inside airplane and flying around in that airplane. So there is a lot of work at global and also at national level. And if any of you follows me on LinkedIn, just yesterday I wrote a little bit of a piece about what's happening here in India in terms of governance initiatives around AI. So I welcome your comments on that as well. So there is a lot happening in the world. There is actually at this moment, there is no agency in the world that has not yet come up with some type of principles or guidelines for AI. From the World Health Organization to the UNESCO, from the United Nations to the IEEE, you name it, they all came up with some kind of regulation, of the principles. First, I have been involved in many of them. It's quite complex because you sit in a room with people from all over the world and we have then to agree what are the principles, so that is complex. But it is less complex to do that at a very abstract level. No one is going to disagree that we want AI to be transparent. No one is going to disagree that we want AI to be fair. Those things we kind of all agree. So abstract, we don't really know exactly how we're going to do it. But no one is going to be in those meetings and say, well, I do want AI to be irresponsible. I do want AI to be unfair. No one is doing that. So in a sense, we all go into those meetings agreeing on something. It's easy to agree then, but then it's very difficult to know what are we then going to do. We make these documents, and then the politicians go on TV or go whatever, and show, look, we have these documents, and we all stand by these important principles for AI. But then we are developing these systems. When I start programming my algorithm, how can I do, what do I need to do to make sure that this algorithm is fair? It doesn't come in these principles. No one is telling me that. How do I know what my algorithm is doing to prove that my algorithm is aligned with human dignity? I wouldn't have no idea. No one who's writing these things knows at all what. We just say we have to do it, and then someone, somewhere will appear a solution, maybe. So it is important to see, it is good to have all this agreement. It is good that people at least at higher level of abstraction agree on some principles, but there is a lot of work still that needs to be done. So one of that much more work that needs to be done is what we did recently, and you announced me with that, with the United Nations on a document that is online, on governing AI for humanity. Here we didn't went into this type of principles. We went much more about, okay, if we want that there is some global AI governance, what are the institutions and the processes and the controls that need to be put into place? Because, like I said, if we want to move from the nice words of this document, we need really to start work in many different ways. We need to start thinking about legislation. In Europe, we probably have heard about that. There has been passed by the European Commission a law that determines what AI is going to be and to be used in Europe. So there is laws about it, laws that the government comes. Of course, the law only makes sense is that it comes with some ways to enforce it, some ways to check and to validate, and to get penalties as well if you don't follow the law. But we don't all need to go develop laws. We might also think about developing standards. And standards are much more usually industry-based, much more soft compliance, so no one is going to force you to follow the standard, but you need to follow the standard if you want to be part of a certain association. We also need to think about changing the organizational process, to have within the organizations people that think about all these questions that I've been talking about. That is then not the computer scientists or the engineers, but other ones within organizations. We need to think about this. We need to think about how we're going to monitor, so we put all these things and we say AI needs to be fair and whatever, but how can we assess, how can I do, what do I need to do with my own software that I'm developing? And of course we need to make this part of our education and training materials. We need to be aware, all of us, that what we do is ethically based, and there are consequences, and they are good and bad consequences for what we do. Everything is a value. Technology is not value-free. It comes with values that we put in it. So we need to know, also as engineers, how to deal with ethics and so on. So going back to the United Nations, The idea was, like I said, to not so much to come with the points and the values and the guidelines, but more to focus on things like coordination. How are we going to coordinate this? Assuming and expecting that ethical behavior is not necessarily meaning the same thing all over the world. The way that we consider things to be ethical here in India might be different from what we consider things to be ethical in Sweden, where I live. Doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong, but we need to expect that within what our culture and our values are, that we all try to do the best that we can and align with those values, even if the values not necessarily are the same. And of course, all of this has economic impacts, and we have to be aware that it costs money to do responsible AI, maybe even more than to do just the everyday AI, and this money needs to come from somewhere. And those are the suggestions that the United Nations proposal comes with, so there needs to be some collaboration about science, what are the new developments, and not keep them inside the companies that do it, but make it available for others to know what is the state of the art, how are we going to agree on different approaches to governance, how are we going to start exchanging standards from one place to another. Think about these adapters that we have to take around when we go abroad. We put our laptop to charge in a socket that is different from the one in our campus, so we probably need to do that with standards of AI as well. We need to do much more on capacity development, and we need to do a lot, like I say, these things need money. And it needs to be, unfortunately, it's not my role because I was just an advisor, but the United Nations have to come with it. If they really want to do this, they also have to come with the money to do it. So, again, let's think a bit, how can we be responsible? And I'm almost finishing, and there will be some time for questions before we go. When we talk about all these standards and all these guidelines and principles and laws and so on, those people in these rooms, they mostly don't really know much about algorithms or computer science like that. What they look is what I call the tip of the iceberg. They see that there are chatbots, there are embedded systems, there are decision support tools. We want to regulate these things. We really want to make sure that chatbots don't make stupid suggestions or dangerous suggestions and so on. They forget, or they don't know, that below this top of the iceberg, there is a whole world of technologies, of services, of products, of processes, and so on, which goes all over the place. And we can design it like this very clearly. It looks nice. There are all these colors, one on top of the other. It makes all sense. We see that it's all very nicely organized. But let's see what happens in practice. Firstly, usual suspects are all over the place. There is no separation of concerns which are in many other sectors of industry compulsory. So they are all over. And because they are all over, they will start messing up these colors and put it all together, because then if you need to do something, I don't know, at the level of the performance tracking, and you need to do that by using the computer infrastructure, they just mess it up. So what we end up with a huge ball of Play-Doh or plasticine, which is what is below that nice top of the iceberg that we see. Now the poor politicians, they say, okay, we have to govern that, and they are govern something which is standing in top of a messy ball of plasticine. How are we going to go back from this very messy ball to the nice colors that I had in the previous slide? I don't know. They also don't know, because they're not really aware of this. So it's important also to create awareness on those that are developing the standards. And we can do that sometimes with not too much of a complex work. We can do that by starting thinking ourselves, by individually or our institutions, what does it really mean for us, what do we understand by being responsible and trustworthy. We also need to understand that there is not, we can never have it all. So we cannot say we want to be safe and to be private and to be unfair, unbiased, and to be inclusive, everything at the same time usually doesn't really work. So we need to start understanding the trade-offs and making the choices about it. Then we need to create this culture of asking ourselves things like the questions, do we need to do that? Who is going to be responsible? Is AI the best? Those are all kinds of things that we can do without any laws or any United Nations kind of with very nice books and so on. There is work done by the World Economic Forum in which we describe all these processes in much more detail than what I'm doing now. So if you are interested, search for this value alignment in the World Economic Forum. And there comes very concrete steps that can be done, and that are independent of any law that country might put or not, any standards that industry might put or not. These things that we all can do just by thinking about what is our own individual responsibility. So we need to realize first that AI is not a solution for all our problems. There are many other things that might be much more useful, and that we need to invest as much as we do with AI. We need to address that there always be discrimination and bias. Data is never possible to be completely fair. So we have to address these issues. We need to go beyond the disciplines. It's not something, like I say, that can be solved by one discipline alone. And we need really to start thinking about what are the standards that we want to adhere to, without really thinking about the waiting for laws to come or for someone outside to tell us what to do. Maybe we need to start thinking about another way of doing AI systems, but I think because we should have some time for questions, I just go to the end of it. I've told you a lot about choices. We have choices, we need to decide how we do with this choice. There is one choice that we don't have. Responsible AI is not a choice. No one can stand and say, I want to do irresponsible AI. So we do have to understand that the responsibility is not a choice. Also that the responsibility is not bad for innovation, which is something that people always say. Yeah, there are laws, and if there are laws, then we cannot innovate. No. In any other sector of industry, in any other time of history, we see that by creating regulations, by creating standards, we are actually opening up the capacity and the directions of innovation much more than if it's in an irregulated environment. So we do need to understand the responsibility that we have, and that it is not a choice. And we need to use that also in our business, in our lives, not just as a direction, but also understanding that that can give us the opportunity to transform the things we are doing and to differentiate between different types of business. Thank you. Now I can take some questions if anyone wants questions. You can always also, I don't have my email address here, but you can find me online or on LinkedIn, and if you have questions, you can do questions later as well.
No.
Any questions? Don't be shy. All questions are good. So if there are no questions, I want to thank you all again to be here. I hope it was relevant for you, and contact me if you remember later on that you want to ask something. Thank you so much.